So I I think I've been a part of buildings that kind of have that same mentality. Again, the older teachers that are it's not all older teachers, but
No.
the older teachers that are resistant to that type of change. I think it's good that you acknowledge when this can and can't apply. Not everything is going to apply to real life, right? Like how much of math going through high school did you actually hold on to do a greater good, right?
Right, like I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, yeah, you're not going to be using synthetic division with polynomials every day, but like this helps you with like calculus that you could use every day. But I think that with my district really pushing, we're doing like learning cycle reviews where we like have to have like a comprehensive risk assessment or something at the end of it. I think that that's really kind of pushing us to think outside the box and have more real life scenarios, which further deepens their learning rather than their memorization. And I've noticed in Algebra 3 that the projects have really helped them. I had a student like 2 years ago come back and she was like, oh my gosh, like Miss Keller, I had to take a loan out and I remembered back to your class and thought about the loan project and was like, oh my gosh, I know all about loans. I was like, see, I did help
Oh,
you.
there you
Don't
go.
say I didn't.
Yeah, that's great. Um, I think across both websites, there was a little bit of affirmation on my end. I try to have, thinking classrooms of sorts, and then also have students take ownership of their learning and give them on purpose that freedom to take an idea and sort of run with it. And sometimes being willing to like acknowledge what's on the rubric, but also make adjustments when students are taking challenges in certain areas, right? And the challenge for me as a teacher there is like, well, number one, fair isn't always fair, right? Um, you could argue that when you're doing things like that, the standardization across students and that data is a little skewed, right? So I have to look at it not at the meta level, but really at a smaller level to kind of get anything out of it. Um, and then our assessments are very project based. Like this year, I've probably given fewer quizzes and tests than I ever have in a higher achieving district, which would be weird. But I really try to time and synchronize units where kids get to see the same thing multiple times and they're not penalized for not getting it right the first time. Oh, I don't know. It's hard too because I'm a singleton, right? So I have almost complete authority of what's happening in the classroom, but I do try to give students ownership and that freedom to challenge themselves.
Do you think the fact that you're offering more projects this year is because you're at a new district?
Well, I'm actually not offering more projects. I'm offering the same amount of projects. I'm just assessing less. Um, and if anything, you would think I'd be assessing more, but kids at our school genuinely want to do well. And it's scary because some of them are doing it for point chasing, but others just like they really want to understand, and when they don't understand, they get frustrated as opposed to becoming indifferent, right? So I guess that's what's encouraged me to make sure that we understand things before we're assessing them, right? As opposed to giving them that grade shock of, well, you only understand 75% of it, and then we move on to having 100% understanding. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
It's definitely a challenge, to say the least.
Yeah. No, I get that. Um,
Going on, or maybe helped or engaged in a different way with students. But yeah, I think something I could take back. I don't know, like fostering the kids' personal interests more or trying to get them involved. I mean, as a social worker, I'm not directly in the classroom a lot, but there are times where I can with my students. If that's what you're interested in, then like take it and run with it. Because all of the kids right now want to be like streamers or social media influencers or video game, whatever. I'm like, that's great, but like, let's think of other things that you like. And and even one of my former admin, she would say, because we at that school had a lot of like football players or basketball players, and she would say, that's really great, and I really hope you do that, but let's have a backup plan just in case, because you never know. And I thought that was like a really good way to like phrase it, because you don't want to squash their dreams, but you want to encourage them and be encouraging. So I think kind of phrasing it like that, like those are great things to want to be, but let's focus on what you find interesting. Like, do you like science? Do you like math? If so, great. Like, let's think of other things that you can use those skills in.
Yeah, I liked where it talked about like basically like the authentic and real world type, bringing that
Mm-hmm.
into a classroom because like I had to do an evaluation of a social studies teacher, and I really thought that teacher did a really good job of bringing in real world things and leaving their opinion out, like presenting and giving the students the opportunity to have their voices, collaborate about things that are going on. And I thought that the learning was powerful. And this thing kind of talks about that because when students are kind of the ones steering that and discussing real life things, I feel like you really do see a strong movement of learning. So that's something that really, I don't know, stuck out to me.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Right.
not
And
how you
another
can better prepare people. Go ahead, Norma.
No, another thing, like you were mentioning how lessons has to be student led, right? One of the things, because I teach second grade, it's just like peer feedback. Okay, we're doing a writing, right? An essay about opinion writing. So once they're done drafting, I'm like, okay, go ahead and ask a friend to read it with you and to give you some feedback. So they start working on that, and I'm like, oh, because I was watching a video about like the young kids. I'm like, okay, what is it that I can apply with the little ones right now? Where can I start? So that was kind of interesting to see that peer feedback helps them to learn from each other, right? And it makes them, I feel that it helps them be like taking ownership of their own learning. That was another interesting thing that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna apply more of that, because sometimes I deviate from that because of timing, but I'm like, this is really powerful when it comes to students learning from one another.
And sometimes I feel like they'd rather listen to each other than the adults in the room.
Right. Or the way we explain things might be so like black and white, but then the way they explain to one another, like, oh, I get it. They have the aha moment when they're listening from another classmate. It's like, okay, you got it.
Oh, all
What's
right.
the other next question is what ideals or learnings, right?
Yeah.
Will I take forward in my leadership toolbox? Um, for me, it was like building those partnerships with all the different stakeholders, like the importance of the teachers, the community, the staff members. Um, like it's so important as a leader to work with those different stakeholders. Um, I kind of took that out of our group project as well that we just worked on, like the importance of just um, the impact of all the different people that connect with a school and how it goes. Like I was responsible for the safety piece of ours. And obviously, safety is a huge component of any school, right? Learning is not going to happen. Teachers aren't going to be productive. No one's going to feel good if they don't feel safe, right? But the the amount of people that are involved in that in making it and all the stakeholders and as leaders utilizing all those different stakeholders um, and that resonated with me in this as well is something that I definitely would want to put in my toolbox.
out as frequently.
Well, yeah, and then it's always those who are necessarily, I don't want to say like the teacher's pet or whatever, but you know what I mean? Those
Yeah.
that are always higher or considered like, oh, they're always doing it the correct way, and they're, you know, that are acknowledged for those things. And it's the ones who maybe don't get the recognition. They're like, oh, well, you didn't have the kids didn't grow in this and that. And the leaders don't take accountability for the fact that maybe they could have acknowledged some of those little wins that those teachers have to help build their confidence in that school culture in order to have them succeed and have them feel more comfortable to come to you or collaborate with teachers in a mentorship or something like that to do better in like saying that student growth.
Yeah, we see that a lot in my district, I feel like, because we celebrate a lot of like our AP students, like when the test scores come back and everything. But
Mhm.
it's like you can't take an AP like English class as a freshman. So like how about some shout outs to those teachers who like prepared them for those classes and everything. Like they just didn't wake up and master the class. Like they had steps to get there too. So like, I
Right.
don't know, acknowledging more than just the end people.
No, and I agree with you. Yeah. And it's like we see that in like my school where acknowledgement is one particular co-teacher all the time because they do absolutely no wrong. And yet the acknowledgement maybe for the resource teacher that pulls out or whatever isn't as strong, but yet that person is growing and they don't feel confident. And I know for a fact this resource teacher doesn't feel confident to go talk to them because she feels like every time she does, she's told, well, did you collaborate with this person? Did you? And she's like, well, yeah, but I did it my own way because it works best for me. And my kids are still having growth, and
Yeah.
that acknowledgement of their growth in the way they did it. It's okay. It doesn't have to be done the way your token. So I think making that sure that their success and making sure that their success and failures are a reflection on you is super important as a leader. I don't know.
No,
I
no,
could be wrong.
I feel like that's something we need to remember because I struggled with this question. Like you said originally, you were like, well,
I mean, like,
I felt like that too. I was like, well, failures, yeah, but sometimes you do all that you could and people still fail. So it's like,
Mhm.
is it fair to, take accountability when you feel like you did everything that you've done? So I struggled with it
you
originally.
know what Dr. King said to me once, or she said to our group, do you remember when she said, um, I never took when I had to like let go of a teacher, I thought it was a failure. I didn't like to let go of teachers.
Mhm.
She's like, I really, it was a failure upon me as a leader. And I always was like, okay, I kind of understood that. But like, I think growing through this process, now I truly understand why she thought that. It makes more sense because you have to give and like you always try to set them up and it made me examine and I don't know about you guys but it made me examine the leaders I've had in the past and how even now in our mentorship how they set you up to succeed or how they don't really set you up to succeed. And not necessarily are they setting you up to fail, but they're not setting you up to succeed. They're not setting you up because they view it as that one thing. Like their success is or failures are you associated with? Well, they're like, no, your failures are your failures. Where that was pointing when she said, like, no, their failures looked, that was a reflection on me as a leader.
I agree.
So I don't know. I just remember that. It like popped in my head.
Mhm.
So, number two, is accountability embraced throughout your school/district, and is it manifested in behaviors towards all stakeholders, students, teachers, staff, administrators, parents, community, and community members? Count.
Where half of the teachers were confused really about what it was because of how quickly we went through, okay, this is disciplinary literacy, and then here's how we want you to institute it, right? Whereas where I'm at now, they spend an entire year building the capacity before they actually start building out the things that students and teachers are going to work on. which is night and day, right? It's like, and because I only had last year like probably three check-ins, and they were very informal. And I was on a team of two. When the math teachers have 15, 16, 17 teachers, and these two teachers are asked to do the same work, it it's sort of challenging when we don't have the capacity, like from an understanding level, but also like there are two people here and we still don't know what this is or where this is going or how we want it to actually make a difference. So I didn't take the ownership or the accountability because I sort of dismissed um, having stake in something that we were never fully invested in, or at least not invested in the right way.
Yeah, that's tough, especially when you're seeing other departments with triple or quadruple the amount of people doing the same thing. I feel like that's just hard for you guys to buy into that.
It's probably not well thought out. That doesn't mean I should remove accountability entirely, but it's like if I want 17 people to lift this 500-pound weight versus these 2 pound to lift 500 pounds, like we could probably lessen the load for everyone and maybe kind of find a medium. Um,
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, like yeah, sure, there could have been something I could have done better in a situation, right? But then, like, there are also other people that should have done their part too. Um, and and being able to recognize that. So it's like, yes, I can take accountability, and other people played a part in it too.
Right,
right.
which I
I
feel
think
like
that's
is hard to do when when you're so hard on yourself. Like like you said, it's hard to do that, and that's why I said like I try to do it when I can, but I'm also like trying not to be like, no, that was that or like that was my fault when it really wasn't. But all right, next one.
okay.
It's a loaded one now. That's a loaded one, Like, is accountability embraced throughout your school and school district? And man, oh Lord, that's not a good question for Dean Davis. Not a good question. Um, um, there was a thing, Senate Bill 100, that came out, many, many years ago. And so that accountability piece for some of our students is something that, oh man, we struggle because we all want what's best for students and for kids. And I think sometimes what gets lost in translation. And I remember vividly what my high school coach told me when I was a 15-year-old whippersnapper that thought I knew everything. And he said, Isaiah, the best form of love I can show you is discipline, right? Discipline doesn't mean that you always got to be mean and rude and disrespect. No, 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 no. But to hold kids accountable, to say, you know what, you have skipped this class 3 straight days. Okay. Your teacher is not going to let you make this work up. That is a 0 for the day. That is okay. That is not like being mean to a student. That is not, trying to make a kid fail. It's actually doing opposite when we just make excuses and let those things go. And you're actually not helping that kid, right? And so um, we deal with a lot of different behaviors with a lot of the same students who are doing the same things over and over again, and they get a slap on the wrist. And I feel like it's a disservice for that kid because then they graduate and they go in the real world and try those things, and it won't be a slap on the wrist. And so um, that's a hard question. I think we could do a better job of that for our students and for our staff as well, though. I just think that we are just very and our school is very good, but I do feel like we're very laxed across the board, to be quite honest with you.
Mm.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I'd say our dean tries very hard to hold our students accountable. but there is a miscommunication, or not miscommunication, non-communication sometimes. And that's what staff get so frustrated with is when they put in a referral and then they don't see the consequence or there's no follow-up of just so you know, I met with the student, this is what I did. And so teachers feel like the kids can just waltz back into class and do whatever they want. But in reality, it's like they probably at least got talked to. It's just you didn't get the follow through or the feedback of, well, this is how this situation was handled. Because I know
So, but
That's
I
okay.
mean,
I understand. I made a dinosaur one yesterday. I get it.
yeah. So
Okay, how
then, oh, you got
oh,
it.
sorry, Danielle. I'm sorry. I totally cut you off. I was gonna read the
You're
next.
good. How would we go about sharing a mistake in a way that shows what you learned from the experience?
I think being honest and truthful and like candid, like I think the most meaning conversations I've ever had from a leader when like this didn't go right or wrong, like they literally say, "Hey, this was my idea. It didn't go as planned."
Hmm.
And it's like that, and addressing it not only to like subparts of people, but it's like as a staff, you acknowledge if there was like a quote unquote mistake or not. Like, say it wasn't the growth that you wanted or whatever, but you're acknowledging it. And that goes into that like accountability. Do you know what I mean? Like successes and failures, there's all you're all accountable for it because it's part of your school. And it's really that candid conversation, I think, and what we show it, you show that you're, you know,
You don't have all the
transparent.
answers, and yeah, you
Yeah, you're
are,
transparent and you don't have
yeah,
the answer. And I think that's what one of the things we've learned from here because I think we've all had, admin that either know everything or are completely don't know anything. So, to find and get the things that we've learned from these classes and that those are virtues and try to like incorporate them into our own leadership has made us look at leadership differently compared to like leaders that potentially can come from other schools or from other things.
yeah.
I agree. I thought that as long as you tell the person the why,
Hmm.
the decision that was originally made, even though it failed, I think I learned that most. One of the things I really took away was telling them the why you made that choice and how you realized that it didn't work out, it wasn't right. But as long as I guess you can support your reasoning and then acknowledge it, accept it, ask for forgiveness, and
And
move
move,
on.
yeah,
I think it'll be fine. Honestly, I think communication will save us a lot of heartache.
for
Hmm.
sure.
I really truly believe that.
I feel like communication is just hard in general as a leader because, like we were saying before, you either over communicate, under communicate, or you don't communicate the way people expect you to communicate. And that's one thing you can't fix. Like, you can't cater to everybody, but you can communicate. And it's okay if not everybody likes the way you communicate, but as long as you're like once again, you're transparent in your communication and you are there, then it's people accept what you have to say and they value what you have to say.
Brandy, you make me nervous when you're driving and talking and listening. Hoping you're.
I just left work, so most of that I was at the school.
I know I'm just worried about your safety. So,
I'm okay, I promise.
all
She's
right.
been using her horn plenty. She's good.
Yeah. Anything in particular that came up in your particular group that was something you wanted to share with the rest of us or thought might be an important point? Something you agreed with, disagreed with, something
I
you.
mean, I think one of the things that was developing towards the end of our conversation is how accountability is not necessarily um, how we are held accountable, but also how accountability is addressed in the first place. And so it doesn't mean kind of like the presentation, shared out. It's not creating instances where we're micromanaging and babysitting, but rather kind of having greater purpose. And I think it's best when you have the freedom to enact on something that is well planned out initially so that you can hold yourselves accountable more than it is, are we doing what was asked of us, as opposed to the more powerful, like, are we doing the work that will impact like the goals that our school has set out, right?
That's kind of a nice segue into, did any of you complete that self-assessment, that personal accountability self-assessment that was linked there? Any thoughts about that? Because there was where you could actually kind of score yourself on the areas of personal accountability. Did any of you do that? Sadie, you're saying yes, or are you just nodding? Okay, can you tell us a little bit about what it felt like to do that exercise?
Um, reading through it, I mean, I think though I'm my own worst critic. I still scored like kind of in that second to highest that I am pretty accountable. Some of the questions I'm like, well, yes, usually I do it, but then I had to think, do I always do it? So that was a little interesting or in my own thought process. I don't remember exactly what some of them were, but I do know there are things like, especially for my job as a social work, like, yes, I have to have a schedule. I have to have things turned in. Otherwise, that's going to fall back on me that I can't do my job or I don't look like I don't know how to do my job. But like, there's some things that I think are built into my role. Or yes, I absolutely have to always do these things. And then there are other prompts that were a little more like, pretty sure I do that. I don't know.
Well, and I think too it was a scale of 1 to 5, but it was really like from always to never. So they really were extremes, right? When you're looking at yourself. And I don't think any of us can say that we're perfect all the time or horrible all the time. So the always and never, that always kind of makes me think about it too. For those of you that didn't get a chance to do it, it's in the week 4 area. And if you get a chance to look at it, I think it's really helpful because it's just kind of that self-reflection of just looking through in terms of what and where you are with accountability. Because I think sometimes it's a default thing when we start thinking about accountability, we're thinking about our leaders and holding them accountable. But I think it's also important to remember we have to hold ourselves accountable because there's kind of like, both of those are important. We can't expect things of our leaders that we don't expect of ourselves. And likewise, when you move into a leadership role, you're going to want to make sure that you're holding yourself accountable if you're holding those in your care accountable for things as well. Anything else that came up from either the accountability piece or the fluence nuances? Anything stand out to you with those? Nope.
I have one thing. This isn't directly tied to it, but it was something from the module, and it was the quote that says, "Your job as a leader is to be right at the end of the meeting, not at the beginning." So that was super insightful, um, and
It's
got me thinking a lot.
it's a powerful statement, isn't it? I mean, when you think about it, as a leader, you're not, you really and truly should not be going into a meeting with in your mind what the right answer is and what you want to come out with. Because if you do, what happens? What happens if you do that?
So it seems more
Well,
like,
one, oh, sorry.
no,
You go
go.
ahead.
Well, no, I was just saying it seems more as it presents itself more as a mandate and an order than it would an opportunity for people to feel valued, I guess.
Okay, that would be one thing. Yeah, definitely a chance for people to feel valued. Brandy, what were you thinking?
I was thinking you you lose buy-in from like the staff because you're just kind of and I'm speaking on this because I feel like I that's something that I do. Like I think I know what we should do. I don't necessarily present it, but it's in my head. I'm like, well, I already know what we should do, but and it's like, no, I can't. Like you can't do that. Like I have to give people a chance to speak if I want, especially as a social worker because partnering with them, like essentially we have to work together for this to work. So there has to be some level of buy-in, and I can't go in thinking I have the right idea when one, I don't have the right context because I'm not a classroom teacher. So I can't even speak from their experience. And then two, because I don't have the right context, my idea, as right as I think it could be, it probably isn't based on the situation, the context, what they're capable of doing. So I think it creates a space where people won't want to work with you if you come in thinking you know everything.
And you certainly aren't going to get buy-in because they already know that it's predetermined. It's almost like you would, as a participant, you'd be, well, why are we meeting? If you already know what the answer is, you already know what you want to do. But I think the other message that Fulton is sending with that very powerful quote, which is one that I really think is very, very strong, is that if you come in with the idea that you're right at the beginning of the meeting and you know exactly what's going to happen, where it should go, then you're not listening. And, honestly and truly, there are people out there who may have a better idea, may have a different perspective, may have a different solution. And if you're not open to that, then you're really not you're not collaborating together, you're not thinking together. That's more of a dictatorship. It's not what we would call shared leadership. It's not where we would talk about teams that solve problems together. So it's something to keep in mind as you move into leadership roles, whether they're small roles or large roles. It's really important to make sure that you want to come out of the meeting with the right answer. And that means that other people have contributed to it, right? And that you have listened, you actively listened and not just sat there ready to say what you think is going to happen, that kind of thing. You're nodding, Isaiah. So it sounds like
Yeah, it was the first that was the first valuable learning lesson that I had when I stepped into the leadership role that I did last semester. Um, was meeting with a teacher along with our principal on a situation, and I wasn't hearing that teacher out. I was just giving what I felt was going to be the answer, what they needed to hear, and our principal, in reflecting, with me afterwards, because I mean, I was probably 2 weeks into the leadership position, basically told me exactly what we're talking about is our job is first to go in and listen to what it is that the teacher has to say, because we will be able to give them better feedback and better help instead of us like controlling the conversation. And then he said, ultimately, a teacher is going to be happy when they walk out the office feeling they were heard and we have a good resolution for them.
yeah.
When they come in at the beginning, this is where we got to listen to them and let them go. We might not have the answer at the beginning, and that's okay. We need to have the answer when they leave that office. And it was a real good learning piece and learning lesson for me. Um, two weeks into my role. And then I was thinking, man, I'm a bad leader already. Man, they're gonna demote me back. But no, in all seriousness, no. Just have the answer by the time they go out, like to me.
Well, I think your leader, your mentor is very wise because it's just so important for people to feel that they've been heard. And if they feel they've been heard, it may not even be as important for them to agree with your solution at the end, or it might make them a little bit more amenable to your solution. They may let go of their solution at the beginning. But I think that goes with dealing with parents, that goes with dealing with students, that goes with dealing with your partners, your spouses, your children. People want to feel heard. And when they feel heard, they're more open to what you have to say. So it's something as a leader that if you ever have a chance to put a quote somewhere, that's a good one to put in your planner, or maybe put it in your planner when you have meetings to just kind of look. I actually sometimes have a little card that says that, and when I'm walking into meetings that I know are going to be kind of interesting, I look at that to remind myself, there could be other solutions here. There could be other perspectives that I'm not considering. So, okay. Anything else about the asynchronous activities for this week? All right. Well, go ahead.
I have something to say. So when you were actually talking about how we need to make sure that we're listening to staff members, right? When I started my internship, we were doing like brainstorming different activities for the countdown, A through C countdown, something easy as that. So my mentor was asking me for my feedback, and I'm like, well, I have heard from other teachers that the A through C countdown for the kids is really complex. It's not fun. Um, it's not enjoyable, not even for kids or the staff members. So I was expecting for her to be like, okay, let's go ahead and brainstorm different ideas. Well, no, it was like, well, if they don't like it, that's okay. We just don't do it. And I'm like, okay. So it's just that fine line of like, do we listen? It's just everything has to be academic. I get it. But there is not a balance between like, let's go ahead and have something engaging and interesting for the kids instead of just everything like. So it's usually, I guess it's just have to balance it out. But whenever you say, well, they don't like it, that's fine. Then we don't do it. It's just, to me, it's like, okay, well, what do I say to that? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another way to just shut the conversation down,
Mm-hmm.
And when people stop listening, then other people stop talking. It's true. It's true. Any other comments or questions or thoughts? You're good. Okay. It's 5:53. Let's take a break till 6:05, because then I'm going to hit hard with a presentation from Anthony Muhammad and kind of keep us on a faster pace tonight. So yeah, so if you take a break until 6:05, turn off your camera and come back at 6:05. And oh, Norma's gone already. Okay. Okay, welcome back. Okay, so this evening I'm going to talk a lot about the work of a very important thought leader, a man who's pretty well known in the area of leadership. How many of you have read any of the works of Dr. Anthony Muhammad? Is anyone familiar with his work? Oh, okay. All right. Well, then hopefully you'll be interested and learn something a little bit new tonight. So Dr. Anthony Muhammad is a well-known educational consultant. He was, however, a practitioner for over 20 years. And he served, I think, as a middle school teacher, a middle school assistant principal, a principal, and I think even a principal of a high school. His tenure as a practitioner earned him several awards, both as a teacher and as a principal. His notable accomplishment really came about as the principal of Levy Middle School in Southfield, Michigan. It's now he brought it to a level of a national school of excellence. But he and his staff really did that through a very structured PLC type of process, following the real true professional communities at work. When he left those kinds of positions, he conducted some really interesting research. He conducted both like formal and informal kinds of things between conversations, surveys, and a lot of observations. He did it in 34 different schools across the United States. He wanted to ascertain how schools functioned in their school community and what kinds of behaviors either supported or hindered change in a school. So he was thinking about how we could really support change that would, of course, increase student achievement. So the schools that he visited, the 34 schools that he visited and studied and spoke with people were from every different geographical location of the country. They were, there were rural, there were um, suburban, there were urban. He did look at 11 elementary schools. He looked at 14 middle schools and 9 high schools. And one of the things that really came out of his study was a lot of information that can really help us when we are faced with something that's kind of known commonly as a toxic school culture. He really shed a lot of light on what that is, how it actually takes place. And in his book, in several of his books, he's written a lot about how we can take a toxic school culture and turn it around. Now, I can't introduce you to everything that Anthony Muhammad has done in one evening, but I'm going to kind of just focus on one section that was kind of important because in his initial study, he actually kind of took all of that data and sifted it together. And he found that really and truly that when you can understand what the variables are in an unhealthy learning environment, you can kind of uproot and replace these toxic elements. And thus, obviously, create a healthy and positive school environment, which is what we want to talk about, right? He found that as he put the people he studied into different categories, he came up with 4. He came up with people that he calls the believers, the tweeners, the survivors, and the fundamentalists. And he came up with the idea that when you are in a school, these 4 different groups are actually in kind of a bit of what you might want to call a war because they represent different belief systems. Now, we're going to go into these in greater depth, but just as a superficial introduction, the believers are the ones who believe that the core values that are important make up a healthy school culture. They believe that all their students are capable of learning, and they believe they have a direct impact on student success. They are often in conflict with some of the other groups, particularly the fundamentalists. The tweeners, very broadly and very generally, are kind of the new people that are new to a school culture. They're either new to the profession or they're new to the school or new to the culture. He talks about the tweeners as kind of coming in the honeymoon period, right? They kind of spend time trying to figure out where things are happening. They figure out the norms and expectations, but sometimes they get caught in the middle of the war, particularly between believers and fundamentalists. Survivors are a small group, a very small group, thank goodness, but they are the ones that we really would say are really burned out. And burned out to the degree that these people probably suffer from a form of depression. They're overwhelmed by the demands of the field, and they just really barely make it through day to day. And honestly and truly, education is probably not the best profession for these people. He also talks about the fundamentalists, and the fundamentalists are an interesting group, and we're going to, I guess, as I said, dig into them more deeply. But these are the ones who are not only opposed to change of any sort, but they actively resist it, right? They organize themselves and they try to thwart any change initiatives, and they often wield a lot of political power in the building. And they can be a very big obstacle when you're looking at school reform and really trying to take that vehicle to change. So one of the things is that he says that these are really things that have a negative impact and a very, well, not necessarily negative, but a divisive impact on school culture and makes it very polarized. And that in order to really do that, we have to look at what are the things that would really be important in a healthy environment. So there's a study that was done by Butler and Dickinson, and they identified the 12 characteristics that you see right here on the screen. And these are the ones that they think are positive and powerful in a school culture. I'm just curious, if you just take a moment and take a look at, what's on the screen here. We've got collegiality, experimentation, high expectations, trust and confidence, tangible support, reaching out to knowledge bases, appreciation and recognition, caring, celebration, sense of humor, involvement in decision making, protection of what's important, honoring traditions, honest and open communications. So a lot of different items here. Looking at those, what are the top 3 that you absolutely see happening in your building right now? I want you to drop that into the chat. I'll put the screen back up so you can. What are the top 3 that you absolutely do see in your building right now? Just drop it into the chat. And hopefully you have at least 3. And if you want to pull up this PowerPoint, it's there for you in the week 5 presentation section. Just to take a look at the chat. Okay. Thank you, Mariella. Okay. John, thank you. Randy. Okay. Like seeing the involvement in decision making that's coming through. That's a good thing to see, right? I like to see caring. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. So when we start looking at the believers, let's kind of dig into that. So the believers are the ones that Muhammad kind of describes as the people that really have the ability to take students to higher levels of performance and satisfaction. Um, they really work for student success. Often when he put this data together, he could see that they were probably more seasoned educators, meaning that they had at least 3 years, if not more, of experience. And they make their decisions that are around really and truly what's best for students, regardless of what opposition might be. And you can see that he found that as he looked at the characteristics and he sifted through the data between the interviews and the surveys, he found that they were people that had high levels of intrinsic motivation. They really had some personal connections to the school and the community. It was something that they were invested in. They were flexible with students, so they weren't the rigid, black and white, gotcha kinds of teachers. Um, they didn't oppose putting pressure on students, but in a positive way. And they were willing to confront opposing viewpoints. And interestingly, he found they weren't necessarily all the best teachers. They had varied levels of pedagogical skills. But the basic thing was that believers really want success for every student. They want academic success, they want social success and emotional success. And they are willing to work hard. These are the kinds of people that you see on SIP teams. These are the people you see involved in curriculum initiatives, and they volunteer for a lot of committees. They don't feel threatened by change. And if they feel it's change that's good for students, they will actually embrace it. Now, when you think about these believers, when you talk about some of those characteristics, when he talked with building principals, and in each of the schools, in each of the 34 schools, he asked the building principals, if you were to start an initiative that provided extra benefit for students, but required teachers to work outside of the contract day, which teachers would you be able to really count on? And he asked this over and over and over again in each school. What he found was that the principal's answers correlated 90% at the 90% level with the findings that these are the people that he was categorizing as believers. So these are the people who make themselves available and maybe even seek opportunities to contribute because they think anything that positively affects students is worth doing. So in terms of, like consistency, their consistency and drive didn't really depend on the leadership or the influence of leadership. Some of them thought their leaders were great. Some of them thought their leaders were terrible, and everything in between. And there wasn't really a detectable difference in, whether it was a high performing school or a low performing school. But what was really important is you see that they were really volunteering a lot. They were members of professional organizations. And many times they were the ones that were taking money out of their own pocket to make things better in the classroom for their students. The other thing he found out about the believers is that they really had strong connections to the school and community. Often they had home ownership in proximity to the school, not necessarily in the same school, boundaries, but locally not that far away. They sunk down roots. And those are kind of an indicator because when there's a pattern of home ownership there, then that indicates that they're going to stay, right? They're putting down roots and they want to be with the school for time to come. They also were people that got involved in local, either religious or civic opportunities. And that was kind of a way that they brought a sense of stability and positive bonds with students because they're connected to the actual community. They were also people that were flexible. And that was one of the most striking characteristics that came out in his research, because they really, in their flexibility, these are the people who wrote 30% less discipline referrals than a lot of the other teachers. They have high expectations, but they generally would run their classroom in a way where they chose non-punitive measures, and they relied heavily on building positive relationships with their students. And the fact that they used a lot of informal and private management techniques, they weren't sending people to the office as much as the other teachers were. Most of their issues were resolved in the classroom, and they really did, reserve sending someone to the office or for referrals, for serious or very consistent or very severe problems. Now, the other thing too is they don't want to see students fail. Um, and they make it apparent to their students that, failure is not a possibility. They talk a lot about failing forward, right? And they use a lot of different things to put a positive pressure on students. They would call parents. Sometimes they moved students' seats so that they, had more proximity to them. Sometimes they kept students in for lunch or recess or after school to work with them. They offered positive incentives. They did a lot with after-school tutoring. But they had high expectations. That's the key. They really believed that in their students and they wanted to coach them, they wanted to mentor them. And this came through again and again in all of the data that he gathered. He also talked about how the data showed that these people really and truly were willing to confront. But they were not willing to confront very often. They only wanted to really speak out when it was really pretty overt, and something that was they couldn't tolerate. They really were generally hesitant to speak out or to challenge other teachers, except in extreme cases. They almost tend to be passive. They often would choose flight over fight. And this was interesting because they thought it was inappropriate to challenge the behavior or the beliefs of a colleague. One of the things that bothered him about this study was that fact, because he said, peer pressure can be a really powerful influencer on human behavior, and it can actually move people to a higher level of moral behavior, right, or high moral level. But he found that, believers he really feel are people that need to be more concerned about remaining true to themselves and the students that they serve. So thinking about all the things that I've said about believers, can you in your mind, name people, don't name names out loud, obviously, but can you find, are there believers in your school? What are some of the things that they do that tell you that you have some believers in your school?
Think when I like as soon as you started reading that, there were like multiple people that came to my mind based on exactly what you were saying. But I had a question about those people are now starting to feel overwhelmed
Mhm.
because they feel like they're the only ones that are, doing these things. And I don't want to like go too far off topic, but I was just thinking like, how do you keep the believers in that state? Because the topic kind of came up in a meeting, one of the committee meetings we had last week. And I know she's a great teacher. She loves doing things for the kids, but it's to the point where she's feeling overwhelmed. Um, and
Yeah,
so I'm just wondering, like,
that's
how
a
do you keep them motivated?
it's a real problem.
Um,
Yeah, it's a real problem. And what happens is that, and it happens for not for bad reasons, but leaders often tap the same people on the shoulder, right? Leaders always are often asking the same people to be on a committee, to be on a task force, to do things, because they know it'll get done, right? And what happens is that you end up with these people feeling like martyrs, right? That they're constantly overburdened. They're feeling like they have so much on their plate. So I think there's people, as my husband tells me, he's going to buy me one of those t-shirts that says, just say no. People learn how to say no gracefully, right? But I do think as a leader, one strategy I think that works well is that if you've got a task coming up, or you've got a committee role coming up, or you've got a project coming up, and you're wanting to tap this person, I think what you need to do is start having an apprentice model, right? So ask this person if they would serve on this committee, but give them a partner and say, I would like you to work with this person and train them so they can learn from you so that by the time we're moving through this project, you can step back and they can continue. Because I think what it is we just jump to the people we know that will get it done without taking the time to groom and train people and coach them so that they can take it over. And I think the safest way that I can think of is that apprentice model, right? So that, if I'm asking Brandy, too many times to be on this committee, but, you know, I think Eileen would probably have the potential to learn this if she had guidance and she didn't feel like she was thrown in. So if I asked Brandy and Eileen to do this together, and I asked Brandy to train her and to really, let her into your thought processes and show her how you do these and how you organize for the task. That makes, Eileen feel more safe that she can learn and she's not all resting on her shoulders. She hasn't been tossed into the water, without knowing how to swim. And it doesn't make Brandy feel like the martyr. And you actually then can have a transition where you have more people who are able to handle these tasks and you can then feel like you're not tapping the same people on the shoulder all the time. That's just one suggestion that I would have. That takes some, that takes some thinking, and you have to build relationships. But if you keep asking the same people, they're going to burn out. And what you end up with then is not just people that are good at what they're doing, but you end up with people that are martyred, and they're going to get angry. Thanks for sharing that question. It was a good one. The other thing we found with these believers, which is kind of interesting, is that, not all of them were stellar teachers with, real modern and up-to-date pedagogy. They really were huge variances in their levels of teaching. And so the other thing that Muhammad said, in addition to getting them to maybe speak out more and be stronger in their beliefs, but we also need to help them again with their academics, because just because they're people that are volunteering and going along with things doesn't mean that they can't still stretch and grow and learn too, right? So I think it's important for them that we want them to understand that they need to be vocal members of their community, but they also still have to be willing to continue to learn. They need to be lifelong learners. So that takes us to the tweeners. These are my favorite group to describe. These are anyone who's new to a particular culture. So the most common are obviously are the new teachers, right? Fresh out of college, or perhaps people that are career changers. And he calls these level one tweeners. And in his study, about 91% of the tweeners were level one tweeners. Now, they usually they're kind of in an introductory phase, and they're a tweener for about 2 to 4 years. Now, the level two tweeners, though, are also different because they're more experienced educators who move into a new school or a new district or even a new role. So, I'm thinking of, Isaiah, you moved into a new role. You stayed in the same school, but you moved into a new role. So when you moved into a new role, you're kind of a level two tweener, right? When I moved from St. Xavier University after 19 years over to North Central College, I'm still moving in higher ed, but I definitely was a tweener. I was a level two tweener. So there's, the level two tweeners don't impact the school as heavily as the level one tweeners because the level one tweeners are kind of like loose cannons. They're kind of unpredictable. Those introductory years for the level one tweeners are just critical. It can shape their entire career. It can end their career. And their primary goal is just trying to get in and get stable, right? They want to figure out the culture and how to fit in. And the kinds of things that we're going to talk about are the things that you see here on the screen. So with the tweeners, what we do find out is that he calls them people with a loose connection, right? They don't have a lot at stake, right? They've got a year-to-year contract, and that can be broken pretty easily. In his study, 92% of the level one tweeners were people that were renters, which meant they hadn't sunk down roots in the community. They were just kind of, if they were even close by at all. Over 70% of them had a roommate who was not a relative, which meant they were probably younger and a little bit more, able to move quickly places. And it's interesting because we know that home ownership and sinking down roots with a village or a district is really important. So basically what he's saying is that these tweeners are a flight risk. And this is a problem for a leader in a school, right? Because when you bring someone in, you want to spend time with them to help them to grow. You don't want them to leave in a year or two. So one of the things that he talks about is the median age is usually somewhere around 24, 25. Most of the time, these folks aren't married yet, probably don't have a family. And they can kind of bolt at any time, right? These are the people where school leaders have to intentionally establish a connection and create bonds, you know. This is something that leaders, I think, forget to do. You know, they turn over the onboarding to another committee. They assign maybe a mentor and then just sort of let them loose. But I think for leaders, it's really important to take seriously that these people are people you have to protect and you have to sincerely invest in. You know, some of the things that would be important for these people would be just to get to know their personal interests. Put them in a position that connects with their interests. If they like sports, let's get them coaching. You know, if they're interested in the student government, let's get them working with the student government kinds of things. Let's get them involved in the arts. Let's get them involved in something because you want to strengthen their bonds with the community. You know that 41% of new teachers leave the classroom before their fifth year. And 45% of the turnover in schools can be attributed to teachers that are in schools that serve minority students or students of poverty. We don't need that kind of that turnover because those are the people who are school dependent. We don't need that turnover. Those are the students who need us most, right? And they need the consistency. So when schools have that kind of turnover, you don't have the momentum to create change over time because you're losing organizational memory. You're spending time onboarding people, getting them started, getting them invested, and then they're gone. Um, this is something that people have to be really serious about. If we have to be really proactive about selecting our teachers and really strongly mentoring and coaching those new teachers so that we get them to stay, so that they become part of the community and we can continue then to build this strong and good environment. Some of the things he found out as he went through the data on these tweeners was that they're generally pretty enthusiastic. You know, they're new, they're young. Um, they they didn't really come into education seeking financial wealth, so they've got their eyes wide open. None of us have done that, right? But they do have this sense of, you know, they want to do something, they want to give back, they want to make a difference. Um, they were motivated usually because of another teacher, or perhaps there was a parent who was a teacher. A lot of the ones in the study, one of their parents were educators. And the whole thing there was that they tend to really, they tend to kind of jump in. They volunteer at first. They'd like to get involved in anything that's social. So if there's any kind of a staff social function, they tend to at first be the people who arrive early and stay late because they're still got that enthusiasm, right? They believe their students can all achieve at high levels, but they might not have necessarily the best refined package yet of pedagogical skills, right? Um, the other thing that's important about them is that they're on a honeymoon period, right? And so they want to impress their supervisor more than anyone else because they're on a year-to-year contract, right? They're not tenured. They know that the school leader has the power to determine whether or not they continue. And that school leader holds that power of evaluation, and that can be really intimidating, especially when it's somebody who's still trying to get their sea legs and figure out what's going on. So they tend to be very compliant because they don't want to make any waves. But that can conflict with the fact that that means that sometimes are hesitant to reach out and ask for help. So they kind of keep their trials to themselves, and they need to have this balance because they want to please the leaders, but they're afraid to ask for support in case it makes them look weak. So they put on this public face of being positive and full of energy, but inside they're probably having a critical event, right? And we all have been through that. We've all been new teachers, so we know there are things that are important. Now, what happens though is that tweeters, because they have this honeymoon period and they're very ambivalent, they are prime candidates for being recruited by the people you don't want them recruited by in your school. And you know who I'm talking about. Those teachers that would want to get these people and, kind of get them over to we used to call the dark side, right? They want to get them to be on that other team. And so they can really be recruited because they're fragile, right? They're going to struggle, and we have to be willing to partner with them in their struggles. They have to have consistent and ongoing mentorship with a really good teacher, right? Someone who is a good role model, someone who's caring, someone who's kind, and preferably someone who's not on that dark side, right? They need to be connected with stellar examples of professionalism, and they need to really be aware of, we need to honor what their talents are, what their gifts are, and get them involved in a positive way. This whole idea of attrition is a major problem with tweeners. Um, there's, one of the things that Mohammed says in his research is that if our schools are going to improve, the tweeners have to be vested, right, in the long-term, future of the system. We get the biggest and the brightest joining the profession, but they don't stay. And this kind of a revolving door costs over $7 billion a year to districts and schools because it's really hard. The NEA has said recently that, there's this ideal that we can solve the teaching shortage with recruitment, but what we really have is a retention crisis. As fast as districts are moving teachers into schools, they're leaving, sometimes even faster. So when you think about it, tweeners are important for a couple of reasons. How can a school get traction, gain momentum, start moving forward with positive change when there's a lack of organizational memory? When I was working with schools in the inner city, Catholic schools in Chicago, when I worked at St. Xavier, I spent about 10 years working with principals and teachers in these high needs Catholic schools. And the revolving door was so frustrating. We'd spend 2 or 3 years at a school, bringing in assessments, bringing in coaches, bringing in money and professional development opportunities. And you'd have such a huge shift over 2 years that you're almost starting the whole project over again before you even had gotten to the end of where you wanted to go. Schools can't make long-term progress if 50% of their staff is leaving every 5 years. And we see this mainly and mostly in those districts where students need it most, when our students are school dependent. So we have to have strong learning communities. So what do you know about tweeners in your buildings? Have any tweeners?
Our building, it was funny. I think it was 4 years ago. Our principal at the time, she had done a demographic of like the percentage of people that are new in our school, and it was over 50% of our staff was like um 2 years or less. And then it amounted to like 5 years or less was like 50%. And then between that, it was like another 50% of those people were 2 years and less. So like everybody was very new. Our admin was new, and we had different admin, and you could see like that people kind of grab, and that like you don't want them to go to the dark side kind of situation. You saw that a lot. You saw that. And where um I could say now that there's only, because that was right when I started at that school, and there is only two of us left.
That's small.
And yeah, and that's small. Either people have left the school district in total, or have um, literally just gone to another school where the established culture is more, and the performance of the students is a little bit higher. Like our school is a lower performing school. So you could see how that affects
Yeah,
the culture and things like that. And I saw exactly when you were speaking of that, I thought of that. And it's like, how do you retain those? It's the environment, it's that providing that wellness, not only for the students, but also for the staff.
big
So,
time, big time. And it really rests on the shoulder of leaders. So
yes.
when you're in a leadership position and whatever level, and you've got somebody new on your team, somebody new in your department, somebody new in your division, somebody new in your building, and you're the leader, it's a responsibility on your shoulders. I mean, it doesn't matter, like, if you're a social worker or if you're a counselor, if there's someone new to the team, it's so important that those people are brought in and felt supported, and that we get them engaged and committed and to sink down roots, and they feel supported and coached. Leaders have to really make that happen, because this revolving door hurts everyone, and most of all students, most of all the students. Other comments from anyone else about tweeners or your experience with being a tweener?
I was having this conversation earlier too today. We have a teacher that's a first year, and she's really struggling with classroom management. And one of the social workers, her office is right next door to the classroom. She's like, it's a zoo in there every day. And I was telling him like that's so and I went in there and it's pretty chaotic. But she's also in my team and she never brings it up. She never says that she's struggling with this class period. Like she has not said it one time. Um and I have an intern this year, so this week I told my intern to like go in there, but then I'm like, how do I support without being offensive?
Mhm.
Um, and then her not asking for help, like I just was wondering like how do you support
Does,
someone without being offensive, but like also like, hey, you need help.
does your school have an onboarding process? Do you have a,
We have yeah, we do mentors your first 2 years, you have a mentor. Mhm.
so that's where it needs to start with the principal and the mentor talking together, and then coming in a way that's supportive. And I remember that. I remember when I was department chair in a middle school, and one of our first year teachers came in, and it was the same thing. It was like, oh my goodness, things were flying from the ceiling. It's a very talented woman, very bright, and she was afraid to ask for help. But we actually did a little intervention, and we ended up doing some co-teaching and team teaching and teaching, offering behavior systems for her. And I remember actually fighting with my principal because he wanted to let her go at the end of the first year. And we just saw, I saw potential in her. I knew that she had it in her. She just needed the guidance. And so we worked on a plan. And later on, she became, I mean, she really was able to turn it around with the support and with the coaching and the mentoring. She became an excellent, excellent teacher. Um,
Dr. Spellman, I have a question about that. Like, obviously, that teacher was willing to do the work, put the work in,
Mhm.
right? But what if, like, I mean, I'm just speaking from like one that's at our school, and she's in my position, but she's monolingual. And she came in guns a blazing. I was like, oh no. And so she's like knows a lot of things, and she's a very nice individual, and she's very smart. I will give her that. She's very intelligent. Um, but you know, when you put those interventions, and if they're not willing to take them and to take that feedback, it creates a whole nother dynamic, I feel.
well, and that's
And
why.
I don't know, as a leader, how do you continually provide those structures without being like, you need to do this? Like, you don't know everything. I understand that's how you did it in your old district, but you're in a new district. This is how we do it.
Well,
This is what,
she's a level two tweener.
yes, she's a
Yeah.
level two.
And
She
that's
only worked for 2 years in another district, but I think that district allowed her to a lot more flexibility and didn't have the same standards, or things that we have.
but this is a leadership issue, right? There has to be an honest conversation. It has to be a hard conversation, maybe even a crucial conversation about, what is the culture here? What are the expectations here? How can we support you in adapting and moving into that? But sometimes we can offer that and people won't listen, and then maybe then we have a discussion about maybe this is not the right match, right? It's not only being, we've had this hear that phrase all the time. You need to be on the right seat in the bus, but maybe sometimes you need to be on the right bus too. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we get into the next group. But those are some of the hard conversations you have. You can probably figure will happen in a career in leadership. Yeah. And if leaders are afraid to have those conversations, then it has a lot of ramifications. Remember we talked about way back in 500 about Brene Brown. You have to be vulnerable and you have to have courage because leadership is hard. If you're going to lead well, it's not always the easiest thing. Oh, we're getting very serious. Okay. Well, as long as we're getting serious, let's talk about the survivors. This is a very small but a very important group of teachers. These are the ones who have completely given up. They've given up on effective instruction, and they're completely focused on simply surviving, maybe till the end of the school year, maybe to the end of the week, maybe to the end of the day each day. Now, in terms of his study, that this was less than 2% of the teachers. But if they are gone unchecked, they can have a devastating impact on their students. And it really hinders students from receiving the education that they deserved. And you can probably remember back in the day, they did that University of Tennessee study that showed how students with ineffective teachers continue to show the effects of that, even when they're subsequently in classrooms with effective teachers. That the residual effects of having a totally ineffective teacher can be actually measured 2 years later. And if you have two or three or these people in a row, it can be devastating for students. So one of the things that we have to remember is that poor and ineffective instruction can completely undermine the school's mission to take care of their students. And leaders are the ones now who have to step up and say, these people have to be removed. People who are burned out or depressed have to be removed from the classroom and their issues have to be addressed. It's best for the teacher and it's best for the students. What we find is that these people tend to be the ones that are the flight, right? When we feel stress as a human being, we psychologically retreat to a safe place, right? Away from this overwhelming stress. And I think we would agree that education is a pretty demanding field. Um, and so the responsibilities that we face on a daily basis can cause extreme stress for even the most prepared of us. But there's a distinction between workplace stress and what we call burnout, okay? When we're stressed, we care too much, we're trying too hard. When you're burned out, you just don't see any hope. And often this triggers that flight response. And it often sends these people into severe depression. I mean, we're much more aware of that these days, that this is a mental health issue. One of the things we find is that, especially there was a study done not that long ago, within the last decade, that one of every five new teachers who enter into a classroom in an urban situation are woefully unprepared, grossly unprepared. And what we're doing is replacing these unprepared teachers in schools with students who have the highest needs, the highest academic needs, and the highest emotional needs. It's a recipe for disaster. And this is the type of thing that I saw so frequently when I was working with the underserved and high needs schools in the city of Chicago. We're looking at our students who are school dependent. You know, I don't call them at-risk students. I call them school dependent because if they don't receive the academic and moral direction at school, the likelihood of them receiving it at home or outside of school is very slim. And so what happens is that in these situations, when you've got a school, if you're working in a school, you take over a school or that's at high risk and high needs, you need the most prepared teachers. And unfortunately, that's not the case. It's really not what happens. So you end up dealing with, well, probably in many cases, survivors. Um, the things that the survivors do is they start to bargain with students to just get through the day, get through the week. They're not in control of their emotions, so it makes them challenging them. They can't control the emotions and behaviors of the children either. And when their work life is spiraling out of control, it's kind of surprising they even make it day to day. In his notes, he talked about the fact that these people are the ones that the students know. That, students have that radar. They know when there's somebody there that they can take advantage of, right? And so the survivors sometimes do some informal bargaining with kids just to be quiet, because all they want is to be left alone and just make it to the end of the day. My first year as a principal, I took over a building and I had a person that was placed in my building that was a survivor. And that was hard. That was really hard because he masked things. He bribed students just to keep the door closed and he'd sit and read the newspaper. He just was trying to make it through the day. He would give them permission to do things that were not allowed in the rest of the school. And just so that it was quiet and the students didn't bother him and he didn't have to teach. And this kind of thing doesn't endure, right? He wanted to be left alone, but that wasn't going to happen on my watch. What we find here is that these teachers are the ones that show a video, right? Or they let them use computers when they're not supposed to be using, or let them using for non-academic reasons. These are the people that would just give worksheets and busy work to students just to keep them busy. They would kind of bargain with behaviors just to get through the day. So what do you do as a leader? What do you do as an organization when you've got a survivor? Well, the kinds of things that I think I've seen and Muhammad also talks about are the kinds of things that you see on the screen. This is the kind of situation where often you see them reassigning the person from maybe one grade level to another, from one school to another, maybe from one role to another. Transfer them to another building. Sometimes there's a real honest counseling out of the profession. That same first year that I taught, I was a principal. I had a teacher who was also a survivor, but she was not the belligerent, depressed person, but she was totally a person who didn't belong in education. And I spent an entire year building a relationship with her, supporting her, and counseling her to move out of the profession because it just wasn't for her. Um, Sometimes there are punitive measures that are given. I've seen people pull them out of the classroom, and which never made sense to me. But I saw a situation where someone who was totally ineffective and totally burned out pulled them out of the classroom and put them in a resource room so that they did less damage, right? Because they're only seeing a couple of students at a time instead of a full classroom of students. Um, and the thing is, the pressures that they face are hard. And, sometimes you actually have to terminate them. I mean, at the end of my first year, I was able to counsel one out of the profession, but the other one we had to terminate. And it was a very difficult process. And that is not fun anytime, but particularly when you're a first year principal, let me tell you, it was hard. We have to recognize, though, that the pressure that these people have is real. Um, and when you're going in there every day and you're just not together, you're getting depressed, you can do real physical and psychological damage to yourself as well as to the students. So the thing is, we want to keep them away from the students because we need to shield the educator so that they can get the care they need, and we need to keep the students from getting any further damage because this is critical for this. Any survivors? Have you seen any in your time?
I can see one coming. Um, one and like a new teacher at our building that I actually offered to come, like I invited her into my classroom. I'm a big believer in awareness is a thing, right? Like having issues in the classroom is one thing, being aware of it is another. You gotta have that second one, right?
Awareness is huge, yeah.
I did have a question though, because among the teacher, let's just say shortage. I know there's a retention issue. Um, do you think there's anything that can be done at the college, university, prep level to make sure that that doesn't happen in the first place? Like I went through a non-traditional program, but for those that are going through traditional programs, they get through, they end up in classrooms anyways, right?
Mhm.
And they fill jobs when maybe that's not for them. It's like, how can we catch those people
Yeah, that's a
early?
good question, and it's not easy for multiple reasons, right? If you're working at the college level, if you're, first of all, there's pressure on the people in the college level to keep people in the programs, right? Because we need the tuition money, we want people to move through our programs. Um, I think what in my previous institution, I worked mainly with undergrads, and we built what we call the disposition support model. And because instructors are afraid to kind of have the kinds of difficult conversations that you might have with a middle schooler or a high schooler with someone who is a college adult, right? So we put together a disposition support model. And what we had in there was that every semester, every teacher had to fill out a form on every student, and then every student had to fill out the form on themselves. And we had to go into kind of a data system. So if two different teachers filled out an alert about the dispositions of a student, then that we had a 5-step process where people would be brought together, right? If one teacher submitted the same student in two different classes. That was another alert. So we had a way of gathering that if different perspectives, if it was happening more than just an isolated incident and people were starting to see it. And then we started with, okay, first of all, there'd be a conversation between the people that, who filed the alert and the students. But we had a whole handbook like that, here's what we're expecting for behaviors. Here are examples of behavior. Here are non-examples of behavior of a professional disposition for someone who's going to be in the classroom. And we had a 5-stage process that worked all the way up to actually exit from the program. We aren't going to allow you to go into the profession. That's tough to do. I mean, and it was very, we had some people that we moved out of the program and said, You're just not going to be in the profession. You don't have the dispositions, the professional dispositions for that. And that was hard to do, but it was, I think, important because I think we saved students in the long run because we stopped some people from going into the profession. But that also takes the backbone of having leaders, even at our level, who back that and who aren't just worried about numbers and tuition and all those kinds of things. And you have to have we had a legal counsel that went through all of our handbook and all of our procedures to make sure that we were doing things in a way that was super, super legal and would be ways that, wouldn't come back on us that we had prevented someone from joining. The only thing that bothered me was it worked well, but when we counsel someone out of the program, you have to have some kind of an off ramp for them, right? To move into another major or whatever. And sometimes they just left and went to another institution who didn't have the moral compass that we did, and it might let them into their program. So, is there a guaranteed way? No. Are there ways? Yes, but they take courage and they take a moral compass. And that's important for people at even up at the college level. So I'm fighting for it to happen again, but we'll see. But yeah, I think you're right. It's a good
Appreciate
question.
your thoughts.
Pardon me? I didn't hear what you
I said
said.
I appreciate your thoughts.
Yeah, it's hard, but I think it has to be done.
Sure.
I think it's really important. So the fourth group, the interesting group, the dark side. Okay. These are what we call, well, not what we call, but what Muhammad calls the fundamentalists. And these are the people that he found had some of the most influence. He said the believers have a strong influence, but these fundamentalists have an equally strong influence in the culture of a school. And the fundamentalists are people that are experienced educators, and they believe there's just one way to do everything. I've got the old-fashioned traditional picture up here because that's pretty much what they believe, but some kind of a traditional model of schooling. They are vanguards of tradition. This is the way we always did it, and they want to protect the status quo. They are relentless in their attempts to discourage any kind of change. They don't want anything new. They want to protect a system that's allowed them to survive, right, and to thrive. They believe that their traditional model of schooling, the kind of schooling they went through, is the best. And it's, because it's a system that was used to educate them, and that's what they were socialized into when they became new professionals, because these tend to be more seasoned teachers. This is something that they hold near and dear. They see change itself as an enemy. And anyone who challenges their traditional systems or their traditional beliefs, they see them as the enemy. So Muhammad talks about how does a school leader really, who's interested in putting together a healthy and positive school environment, figure out how they operate. Because any organization that doesn't evolve and improve is just going to fail. And these fundamentalists don't really have the intent that they want the school to fail. They don't want to ruin the school. They don't want to destroy things. They really believe that what they are doing and what they stand up for is what's going to save the institution by going back to the old ways. And today, when you've got schools where leaders are being pushed to make substantive change, this is going to be interesting because these people are really zealous about maintaining the status quo. So how do they operate? Well, first of all, they say no. They are very blatant. They are very overt in their opposition to change. They do enjoy teaching, but they have real strong feelings about the old-fashioned way. Sometimes they speak fondly of the old days. Things when we could make decisions of what was in the curriculum. We didn't have to follow all these standards. When local control was part of it, when even some of them talk about the good old days of corporal punishment, right? And we need to know that there's a couple of things about them that we need to know. These people have been educated and socialized into education since kindergarten. They spent thousands of hours as students. And probably since they were 5 years old, they've observed others, in the field of education. And it's kind of an apprenticeship of observation, right? They were probably good students in that very traditional model. They probably were high level students in their organizations. And so they want to preserve that same system that worked so well for them. I mean, it's almost kind of irrational to say that people who benefited from a system should want to change it. I mean, that doesn't really make sense. And when you think about it, there is a lot of research that says an educator's own personal experience in school is the single most important variable in terms of how they create their classroom. Some of the things that are interesting about the fundamentalists is that they really like the old contract kinds of things, right? Where the right teachers' right to control the curriculum, the idea to set their own norms and own practices, everything before the accountability movements came in. We have a new contract, though. We have a new sheriff in town right now, right? So there's a standardized curriculum, there are assessments, there are proficiency ratings, and these kinds of things they absolutely don't agree with. And what's interesting is that, under this new contract that we're operating under, there's students' proficiency is assessed both internally and externally, right? And so what happens is that the fundamentalists will place the blame on the students. Well, I taught it, they didn't learn. It's not my fault. Now, what's kind of scary is that they really believe in this normal distribution that you see on the screen. They're not fans of accountability initiatives. They don't believe all students can learn. They do not see their stance as pessimistic. They think they're very realistic. When you talk about John Hattie's work about predicting student success and how the teacher's prediction has such an impact on student achievement, it's really clear then that if there's our pessimistic attitudes and they have low expectations, these are going to be very damaging to our students. These people tend to really believe that some people are just more capable than others. And they translate that into not only their grading, but also into their discipline patterns. These are the people who refer students who don't fit the typical profile that they want. So they often refer like, say, at secondary level, many, many, many more male students and many, many more students who are in a minority. At the elementary level, these are the ones that refer students that they feel are not mature. They don't demonstrate that they are, appropriately mature for the level of schooling that they're in. It's kind of interesting to note too that just like the believers, they're not necessarily all the best teachers with the best pedagogy. There's a wide range of professional skill in this group, but they generally hold very negative dispositions about their leaders, motives, and their ability. They're really negative about their leaders, and they've got values that make it really hard to promote that positive and healthy environment. Even the most effective ones who might have a really strong professional skills, they still exhibit pockets of maybe some proficiency and effectiveness, but they are still very, very negative, and they won't embrace techniques and strategies that would allow them to become even more effective. And Muhammad talks about the fact that he feels that ineffective professionals who reject any change are a danger to any organization. He also found that these people can be pretty active in the schools that they're at. They're actively and consistently trying to get those tweeners to join their cause. Very, very dangerous to tweeners. They want to gain them, bring them over so they've got more political power. They want to support their belief system. And their level of commitment to achieving their end is pretty intense, more intense than the believers, because remember, the believers are a little bit more passive about this kind of thing. And he watched in a lot of different schools as these fundamentalists were operating, and he talked about how they were very savvy, often very well organized, often very determined individuals. One of the key elements was, though, that they tend to really work more from emotion than rationalization. They like to be, more formal than rather informal. So when you're thinking about it, these are the people that, they want to always go to the emotion, right? So they want to engage you in an emotional argument, an emotional debate. And when they do that, they can come out as victors. And they can do that, that's really dangerous, because when you're dealing with them, you have to be very careful to make sure that, for instance, if you're discussing a change proposal, what's the reason for it? How is it connected to the school's mission and goals? And have you got evidence? Have you got data that you can show that its effectiveness is important? So he talks a lot about making sure that you erode their emotional arguments. and keep reasserting that, schools are built for the education of students and keep students and what's best for students at the center of the argument. That makes it a little bit harder for them to publicly advocate for something that might hurt children, right? And you want to be careful because if you can keep going with compelling evidence, especially empirical evidence, and keep away from the emotional kinds of conversations, you can make some headway with some of these borderline fundamentalists. You'll find that, they don't really want to be a part of official committees and task forces or SIP teams or any of that. They want to do things kind of under the radar. They want to have little covert alliances. Um, they're usually not, they're just really ones that they're a threat. They're just a threat to the productivity of the school. They work very effectively in these little informal backstage, types of things. Um, One of the things that he says we need to be careful with is that they have, in his experience and in his study, he found that they use three primary methods of trying to achieve their political ends and to stop change in a school. He said, first of all, they will begin with defamation. So they intimidate people, right? They threaten to use defamation. They make some personal assaults on whoever is behind the change or whoever is the change agent, and they have a fascination with digging up scandal. They use defamation because it's a really good tool. When defamation doesn't work, then they move on to disruption. So this is where they will try to delay policies or strategies. They figure if they can't stop the person, then they will try to stop and obstruct the actual movement itself. These are the ones that you can tell they they try to pretend that they're the voice of many. You'll hear them saying, "Well, most of us think this," and the vast majority of the people I talk to have done this. They have this idea that they're stepping forward. They try to make you believe they're stepping forward to speak for others who won't speak for themselves, but it's kind of a false front. If they haven't been able to do it through defamation and disruption, then they go into distraction. These are the people who just do very passive aggressive types of behaviors. They want to let everybody know that they don't agree and they're being forced and they're being martyred. So they're the ones that are rolling their eyes, crossing their arms, getting real negative postures. They start grading papers in the middle of a meeting. They start sharing negative comments, texting to each other. They're pretty rough. They're really pretty rough. They just really are annoying. Do you know any fundamentalists?
I know a ton of those that I could connect with right away. But I will say though, I find that what they're good at, they're really good at it.
Mhm.
And I feel like sometimes because of leadership, they're not able to put that into practice, which makes them even more of the fundamentalist type.
Yeah.
That's
Again,
been my observation with them.
yeah. It takes a really conscientious and very strong leader with good perspective to try and, who is the one that says you should keep your enemies closest to you? These are the people you should be trying to cultivate to work with you on teams and get them on your side and really, like you said, recognize, honor, and celebrate what they do well, because that is something that might help you to win them over. It can be a tough challenge. Other people who have fundamentalists? I don't think we have any fundamentalists here, but you might know one.
I find the fundamentalist, well, there's some in my school, and then when we were talking about the tweeners, I mean, he goes between schools, so he unfortunately, I think, got caught in the fundamentalists at the other school. But he's more of the second tier. Teaching wasn't his first career, but he's still pretty young, so he just did a quick switch. So I think coming to our school, he realized he was kind of caught in that trap. So we're like, yes, we brought you to the light side a little bit. But I mean, our fundamentalists though have found very creative ways to be part of everything and in everything. So it's just
Hmm.
they're very sneaky and it's very interesting. I'm always like, how? How did you end up on this committee? but they just have their ways.
They're one of the biggest challenges that leaders will face. Absolutely. So now that I've
No,
depressed you,
no, in all honesty, you were describing some of them. I was like, oh, I feel like that's some of the teachers at my daughter's school, but she goes to a private school. So I was like, and then you saw the picture and I was like, hey, that's what their rooms look like. I was like, oh
yeah, oh,
man.
that's what my classroom looked like when I was a kid. So, you've got 4 hard weeks ahead of you, but once the end of this semester is over, Anthony Muhammad's work is really good. I mean, I gave you just the introduction to the different types. He's got lots of strategies to use with these people. He's written 2 more subsequent books about that. He's somebody that if you're dealing with a toxic culture and you've got some of these characters in your building, he can give you some, studying his work can give you some really good insights in terms of strategies to try and his work is all focused on how leaders can deal with all of this. And we're all going to face it at some point, in some way, whether we like it or not, right? Any other final comments on Muhammad's work with toxic school cultures? Depressing for the night, right? All right, it's 7:08. Let's take a 15-minute break, but I'm going to put you in your breakout rooms first. And while you're on the break, please read the ethical dilemma for tonight. If you have the module open, you need to refresh it because I just opened it so you can access everything for the ethical dilemma. And let's see, it's 7:08, so 7:10. Let's come back at 7:25. By 7:25, let's be back in our groups. Any questions before I send you off? Okay. See you at 7:25 in your groups.
Oh, here it is.
I think I just uploaded mine. Okay. I can go and share this with you. I do have Sadie's email, but I don't have Isaiah.
Um, you
If you
can just
can
send
just
it
put it
to.
on the if you can
I'll
just
just
put
put
it in
it.
the chat and then I
Yeah.
can yeah.
Do we have initial reactions? As a social worker, I felt personally attacked.
Well, um, initial reactions. Yeah, I mean, I just because you feel like you have a drug issue or not a drug issue, but maybe there's drugs, but you don't know about it, and you're you know feeling like, oh, this could be it. I could tell you as a school, I could definitely tell you as a dean, that's a very very bad way to go about it, especially we have a whole policy procedure, whole type of things that we have to do once you start talking about searching and all of those different things. So how it all played out, my initial reaction was kind of shocked, to be honest, just because um, I just know that that's not the typical way we would handle that situation. I was not expecting to hear or for it to be that she was pregnant either. That was kind of, you know.
Yeah. Well, it felt like there was definitely something going on, but I know, just being a social worker, after I read it through everything, I'm like, that is not at all how I would react to the situation. 'Cause I just know there are some kids who aren't going to want to talk to me, and I just have to be okay with that. And like, if there are kids I'm concerned about, like, I have other people who I think bond well with them. So I can always go to them and say, is there anything I need to know? And mainly my thing is, are they like the 3 things I talk about with confidentiality? Like, are they safe? Are they hurting themselves? Is something hurting them? All of those kinds of questions. Like, as long as it's not anything like that, then I kind of let them be. But I think, yeah, she definitely just took it a little too far. And then the thing with finding out she was pregnant, the parents were called before that point, right? I think.
Um,
Like, there's a way, I mean, she handled the situation when she actually was not disclosing. Like, well, she was asking the right questions probably, but just because she doesn't want to share those questions, it means that you're going
Right,
to force her into, like, okay, go ahead and get undressed, or like take out your hoodie to
right.
let me see what you have. Like, for me, that's totally unprofessional. Like, you should not do something like that, you know?
No,
But
and
then I don't
that
know
goes
about,
into that search, all of that wonderful law policy stuff we learned about. So that would be under, oh, what professional codes of ethics.
right.
So,
you said, what's the next question? The
oh,
uh,
just formulate questions, but under the following question after that is that says what professional codes of ethics, school rules, and or policies. So I would put like search and seizure. Is it search and seizure or searching laws, school search
well,
laws?
yeah, I would just simply say, I mean, if you definitely don't want to get into the practice of just, again, I can't speak for every school district, but I would assume that we are all pretty similar when it comes to searches. Like we really have to have a strong suspicion, belief a teacher saw it. Um, there's just a lot of parameters that go into that when it comes into search. I give you a prime example. We had just yesterday, wait, not yesterday, what's today? So it's been Friday. We had a situation, just the idea about how searches can be.
Mm-hmm.
We knew 100% that there was someone who was vaping and doing some form of marijuana in our bathroom. There was about 13 boys there, of which 11 were just there. You could tell to go like, and we had an ideal of
Mm-hmm.
who our suspects could be. And we were told that we don't, if we got to search one, you got to search them all. And then it's going to turn into a huge, issue. And so that whole searching component is, I don't know. I just thought it was, make her take off her sweatshirt because they're saying she has a t-shirt on. I just can't fathom that they were following their search policies.
Mm-mm. No. And like
As well.
Okay. Oh, what did I just press?
Uh,
Um, so then examine the emotions, interests, relationships, and perspectives of all stakeholders. Uh, probably the
Natasha, clearly she's going through something.
so privacy was violated.
Mm-hmm.
Trust was broken.
Trust was broken. What about for the parents? Well, they're probably pretty shocked right now.
Right,
They're
because
about to be grandma and grandpa.
I mean, Natasha, did we write that she was like, I mean, I would assume she was humiliated, violated her privacy, humility. Hmm.
Do you think parents would be more shocked that she's pregnant, or would they be more upset about how the situation was handled? Just curious.
Uh,
I think that they're probably going to blame it on the situation and how it was handled when they're in the school building, and then maybe once they got home.
it's gonna be a really rough car ride home. That's gonna be a rough car ride home.
Uh-huh.
There's gonna be a lot of questions that are follow-up. But parents would be shocked. Parents would be angry in it. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
if I was actually, okay, I'm not, if I knew somebody that was in that situation, because I don't even, there would be anger for not only what's happening in that situation, but the overall process of how it's being handled, you know?
Mhm.
Um, Mrs. T-Horn, and well,
I mean, she's got to be embarrassed with how that all played
well,
out. Like,
before that, she was entitled. I would say she was entitled prior.
yeah.
Entitlement. Like it said the perfect, because she has, Natasha has a line in there, like the perfect, what you say, tell me what you found, Mrs. T-Horn. Wait, let me. Right before that, she goes, let's see what the perfect counselor was wrong.
Right. And she had also approached her several times before, and
Hmm.
Natasha was not interested in talking to her. So definitely entitled.
Mm-hmm.
Pushy.
Overbearing.
Yes.
What about the principal?
Poor guy.
Oh, he's screwed.
Um,
He's screwed because the family's like a prominent. I mean, I'm gonna say this now, if the family's prominent or whatever, yeah, they're gonna be mad that their daughter is pregnant or whatever, but they're gonna be even more mad that this embarrassment happened on school
Mhm.
grounds, and they will go for blood. I mean, we've all known families, like if it doesn't matter how bad their kids are in the wrong, but if you were to embarrass their child,
Hmm.
like you said, there's a thing that said like heads are gonna roll. So it's like that. I mean, he might be a little scared. A little
hmm
scared.
Yeah, definitely scared.
I mean, I wouldn't experience any of this at the elementary level, but I can definitely feel like middle school and high school. This is right up your alleys.
Mhm.
Hmm.
School district would be legal counsel and everything. They could potentially be scared too and like confused of how this happened and worried. Yeah, I would be worried. Other schools, students would be shocked.
Explore the values, virtues, or beliefs that may impact various stakeholders' perceptions.
I mean, I feel like the counselor thinks or believes that she was coming from a good place.
Yes,
So I think the intent behind her actions, I think she feels need to be excused to some extent.
I would agree with you.
Collaboration, resilience. That doesn't work. Citizenship, service, social responsibility, curiosity.
She was a little
What's
too
the question
curious.
again? What's the original question?
Virtues and conflict. I feel like, I don't know, is that pushing a virtue onto the counselor by saying curiosity? Probably, because that's coming from a negative sense.
Yeah,
But
because
I
she was
think she
still,
was though. Like I don't think she had negative intent,
no, I
which
don't
I
think she
think
did
is
either.
why she kept trying to pull her. So I would go with curiosity and maybe judgment. Curiosity and judgment, because like while she was concerned, she also kind of made an assumption that she was doing drugs and like made decisions based on that.
Oh gosh, I cannot spell.
It's a tough word to spell. I get it.
think it's just the end of the night. Now I don't even remember what we
Because
said.
I'm gonna have to clean it up.
So like
Her
curiosity.
curiosity like clouded her judgment.
Yeah.
Okay. That'll work. Okay. All possible stakeholders.
The
We want to put names in.
yeah.
Dr. Mateo.
Mhm.
Mateo.
Thanks. I needed that.
Mrs. T Horn, Teahorn.
And then the student's name's with an N, right?
You want to play
Natasha,
with it? Go get that tray
N
off the counter and keep it on the tray.
ASA.
N-A what?
NATASA.
Her parents.
Mr. and Mrs.
Yeah.
KABIEVS.
I'm gonna put Picasso's parents.
That works.
Dr. Mateo was the principal. Is that right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And the others, like the other students.
That's true. Do you want to say law enforcement at this point? Or no? Take them out of it.
I would say, I only say no because she didn't actually have drugs.
No.
But now the district administration is certainly.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say next. Yeah, the district.
Keep it in the bucket too. You're not supposed to take it out of the bucket.
That might be good. So then examine the emotions, interests, relationships, and perspectives.
Oh, it's got hair in it.
Okay. Natasha is at this point probably feels traumatized and maybe
I'll keep it in the
violated.
bucket.
I was going to say she probably feels a little violated.
Mm-hmm. And embarrassed.
Yeah, because her parents clearly had no idea.
Yeah.
And she clearly wasn't ready for them to know. Her parents are probably, I mean, her mom was crying. Her parents are probably extremely upset.
Vulnerable.
Ooh.
That's a good word.
Thanks. I landed North Central. All right, I got a smirk out of Dr. Spellman. That was good.
Hey, Brown and 500.
Brownie points
That's
for John.
Wow. Extra credit.
I paid attention for one class. Okay, other emotions. Stuff like you or her parents. Probably feel shocked.
Shocked.
Upset.
I would be angry. Like, don't have my daughter in here taking her clothes off.
Yeah.
It seemed like, how did her dad walk in there? It says that her dad had a look of anger and determination in his dark brown eyes, while her mom cried gently into a handkerchief.
It's like need to retaliate or
would have told us. Well, there she is, Dr. Spellman.
Yes.
I was just gonna come ask you a question. I noticed on our syllabus, and I don't know if it's a typo or if it's legit. Are we in person next week?
No.
Oh, okay.
Where's that in the syllabus? Oh my.
On for 11/17, it says like usually it says asynchronous or synchronous or whatever, but like for next week on the 17th, it says on campus class meeting.
Let me pull up the syllabus so I can see what you're talking about. Is it
Oh,
um I don't have it in front of me, so give me a second while you're
okay. Sorry. No, no biggie, but I just noticed that. So I was like, oh, maybe we're in person. I don't
no, no.
know. Okay.
All right, explore the values, virtues, and/or beliefs that may impact various stakeholder perceptions. I mean, I think if this got out to the broader community, it would be a big like search and seizure issue.
Isaiah, what page of
Basically.
the syllabus was that on?
Um, oh boy. Let's see here.
Because it's not on the front page where all the sessions are listed.
If I went to the syllabus, I was at the syllabus, click on the syllabus. Um, it is
It says page 22 of 24 at the top.
22. 22. So no one else has probably went that far down anyway.
Where do you see? Oh, I see. Okay. That's not good. Okay. All
I,
right.
I don't know how I found that. I have
Well,
no idea how I.
I'm glad you did. I'll fix it. But no, we're definitely meeting online. Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right. I'll fix it while you guys are doing your conversation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you so much for catching that.
No problem.
Okay, so what was it? So going back, explore the values, virtues, and beliefs that may impact the stakeholders' perceptions.
I mean, so I guess the virtue with that would be like justice. Like, is this the student did not get her version of justice in that
And
moment?
also, right,
Uh,
cross could be another one, or no?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
I mean, cross,
I would say that like a lot of stakeholders, they would wonder about the respect. They would wonder how many students are violated at this. What's the
Mhm.
respect factor for students? I mean, you would end up eliciting a lot of
Yeah,
questions.
respect and just distrust. I don't know.
the boundaries, which ones are the boundaries? Why are they not respecting those?
Mm-hmm.
So identify and focus on what is essential, ignore the noise. We know that it's essential, the well-being of the student, right?
Yeah,
And
I was
then,
gonna say the well-being and the treatment or the respect of the student.
Be right back. I have a child screaming as if I don't know what the heck's going on. I'll be right back.
Recognize and name biases. I would say the school counselor and principal like are biased because of what happened to the other student who passed from a drug overdose. So I feel like they were hyper fixated on it. Or hyper fixated on like signs of drug abuse.
I guess I just wanted to prevent this from happening again. And instead
Right.
of like finding like facts, they just based on their perception and previous
Right.
uh,
Kind of
Guys,
seems
give me
to.
2 minutes. My wife isn't here tonight. My 13-year-old slammed my 10-year-old's hand in the door. So I got to get my ice pack.
All right. Good luck.
Just
Godspeed.
give me 2 minutes.
okay, that's fine.
Can you scroll down, Norma? Sorry.
So the next one will be determine
Oh, never mind.
that on the moral issue.
I got it. I was not being smart. Okay. Um,
Well, that will be
determining the players that
so.
moral issue.
I mean, I guess the principal in this case will be the one.
Well, and I would say Mrs. T-Horn because she's the one that took it too far. I mean, ultimately, the principal is the one that has to handle, but she also, I mean, she's the one that started it.
Right.
And she didn't listen. Well, I mean, she kind of did, but she also didn't really listen when he said, well, you need to back off.
Ethical
Yes.
decision making and trauma informed care.
Yep.
Look at you.
We do a lot of trauma informed care.
I was like, that sounds
Affiliate.
exactly like it came from your high school handbook.
That and the restorative conversation.
Oh,
Those are some
yeah.
big things that we focus on here.
When we have the restorative conversations, let's make sure that there's a blanket with candles.
We're not doing those this year. It's so sad. Now we have like regular professional development, and I think I'm the only one who misses circle time, but everyone's like, why do you miss that? I'm like, I don't know, because it was so weird and we got to see different people and sit around a carpet. It was very weird. I can't even explain it. I mean, my picture explained it well, but
Should make it your little Gmail icon.
You should make it your
Meme.
oh, I love that when you showed that to us. We were all like, what?
but it would work for this. We could do circle time and a restorative conversation. We will pass our talking piece so everybody can be heard. I mean, that's like literally what they wanted to be happening at my school until, I mean,
Till
they committed
HR
to
got
it.
involved.
They committed to it for the year, so they couldn't stop halfway through when they realized that it was not something that was going to be happening or it would be an HR nightmare. But it quickly changed. So we're not doing it this year, but it could work for this, like with the small group.
Okay. Higher staff development, ethical decision making, and care. That's option A.
Oh, I don't know. I was just writing things. What do we want? Option A, B, C to B.
Well, we need to create like a protocol on what to do when this happens. Like what to do when like a more clear and concise protocol on what to do when if we have to search people or if we have to, have discussions about drug use and things like that.
So establish a system for suspected drug users. Like, I don't know, what would it, or it's even more so for when you suspect students of doing something that's illegal, even maybe.
Yeah.
So it could be anything.
So
There's just gotta be.
establish, yeah.
Review and clarify
Yeah,
policy.
it's like when we do the searches, like how I was telling you guys, when we like, okay, all students like line up in the hall, it'll be in the middle of class, they'll just be like, it's a random classroom search. There's nothing random about these. Like they've gotten tipped off by someone that either someone is dealing or usually it's not a weapon or anything, but like whatever it might be. And then suddenly they're all searched, but like it's not very
I mean, I
random.
search backpacks, but mine is like more for like toys and candy.
Mhm.
Like I was like, no, you're not supposed to have candy. Give it to me.
Yep.
And then they go into middle school and that's the reward system. Here's all the candy.
No, one of my students was dealing candy from his thing. I was like, you cannot give candy out to friends. You can have it at lunch, but you can't give it to your friends. So we had to confiscate his candy. That's what I confiscated.
That's good.
Mhm.
Okay, so all right, back to our options. So we got establish, review, and clarify policies on student searches,
Yeah.
counseling boundaries, and student privacy. The
Yeah.
other one would be facilitate a professional development session for staff on ethical decision making and trauma-informed care.
Well, I feel like both of those have to happen in option A.
Okay.
I feel like option A is like both, but option A and option B, like, I mean, and nowhere in here do I think we're gonna fire the
Right.
Right.
because she was acting in the best interests of what the child like, but do I think what she did and how she went about it is correct? No. So now it's just looking at the procedures and the system that they're
So
for,
then maybe she's on
like a probation would be option
yeah,
B or option A. Mm.
or I don't even know if probation or maybe like
Like a
like
mentor check-in.
yes, like our school does sends you like the phishing email and then you gotta hope that you don't fall for it. And then if you fall for it, then you have to like take the
I did Joliet.
course.
That's terrible.
So you got like circles and phishing emails. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
they don't want you to fall for any scams. So but if you fall for it, then you have to go through this retraining thing. It's almost something like a like a mentor program or like a 1 year program or something.
That's
I
what
don't
they're
know.
trying to catch you.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
How many minutes do we have left, Dr. Spellman?
You have until 8:15, so you've got 13 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we're good. All right. So what is the
But
right decision based on what is best for the student?
I
This is
think,
tough.
well, I think you have to hold the students accountable, but also not take away their safety and their trust. So I think there is a better way to address it so that you are keeping the school safe, but also you're like you said earlier, like respecting the child as well.
And like their boundaries.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So what is the right
student respect and boundaries are preserved.
While
And
still being held accountable.
got it. Okay. All right, let's hear it. Option A. Oops. Option
My
B.
first my first thought was review whatever those search policies are with Mrs. T Horn. Like
Yeah.
nothing happens, like no punitive things happen, but just like a conversation about this is what you should do next time.
Yeah, starting with have somebody with you if it comes down to this.
Okay.
Option B, do nothing.
I think there has to be some repair too with like that family and that child. So like I know they had this conversation about what happened, but then maybe there just needs to be another restorative conversation on like how they have to move forward. Cause I don't like what if she has to interact with her again and that type of thing.
Is that a part of option A or is that separate?
It could be. It could be whatever we want.
I feel like it
True.
should be a part of option A. So like administrative policies and procedures are reviewed and then restorative
With Mrs.
practices.
T-Horn and Natasha.
The family, yeah.
Okay. option B, so that
Be
student be
suspended.
removed from that caseload.
Like she's removed from being the drug and alcohol counselor.
Like that student,
Is no longer seeing her at all. Like just sever the relationship.
yeah. I don't know. I guess I was thinking of if she was a regular counselor.
Right. That's what I was
Yeah.
wondering too. Is she like, yeah, I don't
I don't
know.
know what that looks like. I'm not in the high school setting, so I don't know what it looks like to just be a drug and alcohol counselor.
I
We
don't
don't have
think
those.
we actually have one. Do you have one, Caroline?
Nope. We just have regular counselors and the SRO.
Okay. So what am I writing for option B?
Or
Go ahead.
maybe staff training on like more staff training on how to recognize if the kids are doing drugs or something.
Yeah. Okay.
Like dare.
This is okay. I
And
put
like I
step.
said earlier, it's only her for 1,200 kids.
Yeah.
Look to see if you could hire a second drug and alcohol counselor.
Or like out
Maybe.
or community, like help from community resources or something.
Yeah.
Well, I put staff and student drug education / emphasis on policies and practices in the minds of like maybe instead of her work trying to single out students and become the person to be like, you might be on drugs. Instead, like work in practices within the school building and community so that we can continue to deter drugs.
So prevention more so than reacting.
Okay. So that was an interesting dilemma. So with let's see, with Isaiah and Sadie, and Norma, who was taking notes?
I was taking notes.
Would you mind sharing your option A, option B, and option C?
So I guess option A, we decided that Mrs. T. Horn will be need to let go because of the way she actually acted, like the unethical practices and um, not getting facts straight before even asking the student to take out her hoodie when there was no one else present. Um, Option B, we decided that she could probably get a written discipline, like a some kind of discipline and additional training. And then option C will be assign Natasha or Natasa to a different counselor.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Mariella, Danielle, were you taking the notes?
Yeah, we kind of all add to it, but we had some different. You want us to read our options?
Mhm.
Okay, so option A, we said establish, review, and clarify procedures on student searches, counseling boundaries, and student privacy. Facilitate a professional development session to staff on ethical decision making and trauma-informed care. Option 2 would be that the counselor would be required to do a year-long mentory type program with some frequent check-ins after they had a sort of conversation with the family and an apology was accepted and put into place. And we didn't give an option C.
Okay. And how about Caroline, Brandy, John? I think you were taking notes.
Yes. I If I can find the right document, that'd be helpful though.
I
There you
got it, John, if you need.
go. I just found it. It's up to you.
I could go. You typed, and that was a lot. So,
Sure. Go ahead.
um, so we kind of were on the same page as Danielle's group. Option A, we said that we would have administrative policies and procedures reviewed with Mrs. T. Horn, and then restorative practices with Mrs. T. Horn and Natasa. Option B, we have staff and student drug education and emphasis on policies and practices. And then option C, we said to suspend Mrs. T. Horn while the incident is investigated.
So lots of different perspectives. Okay. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of having all these different viewpoints?
We don't know what's right. It's harder to make the right choice or the fair choice.
When you on your own, you mean, or
Well, I guess something we wanted to find out was, do social workers have more leeway into how they approach situations because of their role? So we were wondering how the social workers in the group felt in that regard.
I
so
would never tell a kid to take off their sweatshirt. If
Absolutely
I felt like a search was warranted, I would go to administration. I would not do that.
correct. And even like the pregnancy piece of it too. I've run into that a little bit with different students, like rumors and stuff. And like even to disclose that to anyone is like a big HIPAA and FERPA violation.
Even parents.
Mm-hmm. Even parents.
You see, and that was the hard part for us because we were like, well, we don't have any of the social workers with us, so we're just gonna we were very like, well, I don't think she acted maliciously, but at the same time, like we clearly there was things violated, like her own, you know, personal like space in general and her own privacy. But we didn't even think about the HIPAA thing. Like those are, and I should have thought about that, but I didn't. Yeah.
Well, even for, I mean, as a social worker, I mean, there are kids that just don't want to talk to me. And like that's okay. Like I've had to learn that's okay. But as long as there's someone that they feel comfortable talking to, like that's fine. And I just usually with staff members, if I know there's kids struggling, then I reach out to staff members. Like I just need to make sure like no one's hurting them, they're not hurting themselves or any of the confidentiality things. Because if they are, then there's other steps we take. So like for this, like she was told to leave her alone. So she should have just respected that and just left her alone.
That's one of the things that I said too. Like if I know we're just not vibing and we're not able to establish a positive relationship, then I would just reach out to a staff member that I know she had a relationship with. Like I just wouldn't keep imposing my will on her if we weren't getting along.
so just this conversation is a good example of why, as a leader, you need to have different voices, different perspectives when you're making decisions, because it's much, much safer. We make much better decisions when we've got all this information from other people. We're smarter together than we are alone, right? I mean, and it's impossible for any one leader to know everything. So it's important to, to be vulnerable and say, I need to tap the experts and I need to have people around me that I can ask questions that have strengths and knowledge that I don't have. That's a sign of strength, I think, and courage too. But any other comments? We're actually a minute over. I'm surprised you're not all running away. Quick announcements. The asynchronous activities are there for this week. Don't forget them. There's an interesting one that is actually the first of two parts with Dr. Michael Fullen, and there's a whole nice presentation on courage. We have week 6 is open for those of you who want to go ahead. make sure you remember now that the video focused on your own personal vision for character education is due Sunday the 23rd. So if you don't want to spend Thanksgiving doing that, so make sure you get that out of the way. And next week we have Dr. Julia Wheaton, who you all know, and we have Miss Catherine Brennan. So Catherine is she's a retired HR person from a K through 8 district, and you know that Dr. Julia Wheaton has just recently retired as an HR person from a high school level. So the two of them they've come to my classes probably for the last 3 years. They do a really nice presentation on real practical information about when you're applying, when you're interviewing, how to negotiate your salaries, what is different about applying for a leadership position and negotiating that versus a teaching position. So I would really encourage you to think about what questions you might have. And they have a good presentation, but they're really open to questions as well. And they'll spend the first hour with us. So as a courtesy, it would be great if everyone could be there on time, because they're giving up, like I buy them, candy or something like that, but they're really just donating their time to us. But they're going to they've done a really nice job, and every semester students have really appreciated being able to ask them all kinds of questions about those moves into leadership roles. Good enough? Okay. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Dr. Spellman, when did you work at St. Xavier?
I was at St. Xavier from 2000 to 2019.
Oh, I graduated from St. Xavier in 2013.
Okay. Well, you were secondary.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Interesting.
I know. I was trying to, when I heard you say that, I was like, wait, did I have you as an undergrad or no? And I was like, I don't think
I
so.
taught in the graduate reading specialist program, and then I taught in the elementary program.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you were 2013. Yeah. So the last 3 years I was there, I was full-time administration.
Okay.
But so that would have been like 16 to 19. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's where I got my undergrad.
We
Yeah.
probably passed in the cafeteria for sure.
Yeah. Small world. Okay. Have a good night.
Okay. Bye-bye.